The sun was high in the sky, casting golden rays over the quiet suburban streets of Oak Ridge Heights, a small neighborhood in Indiana. 11-year-old Kiara Daniels stood proudly behind her homemade lemonade stand, her smile as bright as the colorful sign she had carefully painted the night before. The letters read, "Kiara's Famous Lemonade, 50 c's a cup," with little hearts and lemons drawn around the edges. Kiara's stand was set up right outside her family's modest home. A cozy, one-story house with a neatly trimmed lawn and a big oak tree that offered some shade. She had been up since dawn, squeezing lemons, measuring sugar, and perfecting her recipe. Her mother, Tasha, had supervised, of course, but this was Kiara's project, her way of earning enough money to join her class on a special field trip to the Indianapolis Zoo. As Kiara stirred the lemonade in a big glass pitcher, a soft breeze carried the tangy citrus aroma down the street. She waved eagerly at neighbors passing by. Mrs. Andrews from next door was her first customer, handing over 25C with a kind smile. "This is delicious, Kiara," she said, sipping from her paper cup. "You're going to sell out in no time." "Thanks, Mrs. Andrews," Kiara beamed, feeling a surge of confidence. Cars rolled slowly by, some honking in support as drivers waved. A few people stopped to buy a cup, and Kiara's tip jar began to fill with small bills and coins. She couldn't help but feel proud of herself. Across the street, a group of kids played basketball in a driveway, occasionally glancing over at Kiara's stand. One of them, a boy about her age, finally jogged over and handed her $1. "I'll take 2, he said, flashing a grin. "Coming right up," Kiara replied, pouring the lemonade carefully. By early afternoon, her cheeks were rosy from the sun, and her little notebook showed she had already made 15, well on her way to her goal of $50. Tasha came out to check on her, bringing a wide-brimmed hat to shield her daughter from the heat. "You're doing amazing, baby," Tasha said, her voice full of pride. Kiara grinned up at her mom. "Thanks, Mom. I think I'm getting better at pitching to customers, too." But just as she handed out another cup of lemonade, the distant sound of motorcycles rumbled in the air. It started faint, like a low vibration, but quickly grew louder and closer. Kiara squinted down the street, shading her eyes with her hand. Around the corner came a group of motorcycles, their chrome glinting in the sunlight. There were at least 8 of them, each rider clad in black leather jackets and dark helmets. The sound of their engines filled the neighborhood, and one by one, the bikes rolled to a stop right in front of Kiara's lemonade stand. The chatter of the basketball game ceased, and even Mrs. Andrews peeked through her curtains. Kiara's heart raced. The bikers cut their engines and the street fell silent, except for the soft clink of ice in her pitcher. Kiara gripped the edge of her stand, her eyes wide, as the largest biker swung his leg off his motorcycle. His jacket had patches she couldn't read, and his beard was thick and gray. He lifted his helmet, revealing a face weathered but kind, though his expression was unreadable. "Is this where I can get the best lemonade in town?" he asked, his deep voice rumbling like the motorcycles. Kiara swallowed hard but managed a small, nervous smile. "Yes, sir. 50 cents a cup." The man chuckled, pulling a crumpled dollar from his pocket. "Make it 2." The moment felt frozen in time, and Kiara could only guess what was about to happen next. The air felt thick with tension as the other bikers dismounted their motorcycles one by one. Their heavy boots thudded against the pavement, and their leather jackets bore intricate designs, skulls, flames, and names Kiara didn't recognize. The leader, still standing in front of her, handed her the crumpled dollar with a surprisingly gentle touch. Kiara's fingers trembled slightly as she poured the lemonade into 2 paper cups. She tried her best to keep a smile on her face, though her mind raced with thoughts. Who were these people? Why had they stopped here? The leader took a sip, letting the cool drink linger on his tongue before nodding in approval. "Not bad, kid," he said, his voice breaking the heavy silence. "What's your name?" "Kiara," she said softly, glancing at her mother, who was watching nervously from the front porch. "Well, Kiara, I think you've got yourself a new customer base," the man said with a grin, holding up his cup for the others to see. "Best lemonade I've had in years." One of the other bikers, a tall woman with long braided hair and a jacket that read Sherry, stepped forward and dropped a $5 bill on the counter. "I'll take 10 cups for the crew," she said, her voice warm but commanding. Kiara blinked. Tea 10 cups? She stammered, grabbing her extra cups and pouring quickly. As the rest of the bikers gathered around, the mood began to shift. The initial uneasiness melted into something almost festive. They started joking with one another, complimenting Kiara's stand, and even pulling out their wallets to tip her generously. Do you make this yourself? Another biker asked, his thick southern drawl making Kiara smile a little. Yes, sir, she replied. My mom helped, but it's my recipe. Kid's got talent, he said, handing her a $20 bill for his 2 cups. The bikers began sharing stories, laughing loudly and clinking their lemonade cups like they were at a barbecue. Kiara couldn't help but relax, their kindness and humor washing away her initial fear. One of the younger bikers, who looked barely older than 20, crouched down to her level. What's the lemonade fund for anyway? He asked with genuine curiosity. Kiara hesitated for a moment, then answered, I'm saving up for a school trip to the zoo. The group collectively awed, and Sherry shook her head with a laugh. Well, we can't just leave you hanging, can we? Before Kiara could process what was happening, the bikers began passing around a helmet, dropping cash into it like it was a collection plate. The clinking sound of coins and the crinkle of bills filled the air, and Kiara's eyes grew wide. Here, sweetheart, Sherry said, handing the helmet back to Kiara. That should cover more than just a zoo trip. Kiara peeked inside and gasped. There had to be over $200 in there. Far more than she ever imagined earning in one day, thank you. Thank you so much, she exclaimed, her voice trembling with excitement and gratitude. You earned it, kid, the leader said, finishing his lemonade. Hard work deserves support. Just as the moment seemed to settle, one of the bikers, a burly man with a tattoo of an eagle on his arm, grew quiet. His gaze softened as he looked at Kiara, his rough exterior suddenly giving way to something deeply emotional. You remind me of my daughter, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. The group fell silent, their playful energy replaced by somber respect. Kiara tilted her head. Your daughter? The man nodded slowly. She passed away a few years ago. She was about your age, loved running little stands just like this. Seeing you out here, well, it's like seeing a piece of her again. Kiara didn't know what to say. Her mom, now standing beside her, placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. I'm sorry for your loss, Tasha said softly. The man gave a bittersweet smile. Thanks. You know, helping her out today feels like honoring her memory. So thank you too. The group stood quietly for a moment before the leader clapped his hands. All right, let's not turn this into a cry fest. We've got some more lemonade to buy. The laughter returned, and with it, a renewed sense of connection. As the bikers began to prepare to leave, one of them turned back and said, We're going to spread the word about your stand. Kiara, you'll have customers lining up around the block by the end of the day. Kiara's heart swelled with gratitude as the bikers mounted their motorcycles, revving their engines in a farewell salute. She waved as they rode off, their presence leaving behind a powerful memory that would linger far longer than their noise. As the sound of the bikers' engines faded down the street, Kiara stood in stunned silence. The helmet filled with money sat on her lemonade stand, and for a moment the entire experience felt like a dream. Her mother, Tasha, broke the spell with a soft chuckle. Well, baby, I think you just made more in one day than most lemonade stands do in a month, she said, her voice full of pride. Kiara looked up at her mom, her wide eyes sparkling. Do you think they were serious about spreading the word? Before Tasha could answer, the sound of car doors slamming and chatter filled the air. A group of people from the neighborhood had gathered at the end of the street, curious about the commotion. Among them was Mr. Harris, the owner of the local grocery store, and a few of the kids who had been playing basketball earlier. One of them called out, Hey, Kiara! What's all this about bikers at your stand? Kiara smiled nervously. They came by for lemonade and kind of bought a lot. That's an understatement, Tasha chimed in, gesturing toward the helmet of cash. Word traveled fast in Oak Ridge Heights. Within an hour, more neighbors arrived, some out of curiosity, others to support Kiara's stand after hearing the buzz about her unexpected visitors. The lemonade stand turned into the center of the community, with customers lining up for a taste of what was now being jokingly called biker-approved lemonade. As Kiara served cup after cup, she couldn't help but notice how the atmosphere had shifted. What had started as a simple summer activity had become something much bigger. Strangers who rarely spoke to one another were now laughing and chatting as they waited in line. Parents shared stories about their own kids' entrepreneurial ventures, and even the neighborhood kids pitched in, holding signs to attract more customers. Amid the growing crowd, Kiara noticed a familiar figure. It was the burly biker with the eagle tattoo who had shared the story about his late daughter. He stood at a distance, leaning against a tree, his expression unreadable. Kiara hesitated, then looked up at her mom. "Mom, do you think he's okay?" Tasha followed her daughter's gaze. "Why don't you go find out? Sometimes people just need someone to listen." Kiara grabbed a cup of lemonade and walked over, her steps cautious but determined. When she reached him, she held out the cup with a small smile. "Here, it's on the house." The man looked down at her, surprised. Then with a soft smile, he accepted the drink. "Thanks, kid." They stood in silence for a moment before Kiara spoke. "What was your daughter's name?" He seemed taken aback by the question, but after a moment he answered, "Amelia. Everyone called her Mia. She had a stand like this one, used to sell cookies and lemonade on weekends." Kiara smiled gently. "I bet she made really good cookies." He chuckled, his voice tinged with sadness. "The best. She always said she'd open her own bakery someday. Never got the chance, though." Kiara didn't know what to say. Instead, she looked down at her lemonade stand, where the crowd was still bustling, and an idea sparked in her mind. "Do you think maybe helping me today was like helping her in a way?" The man's eyes softened and he nodded slowly. "Yeah, I think it was." As the conversation unfolded, Kiara learned more about the man, whose name was Doug. He explained how the loss of his daughter had left a hole in his life, and how seeing Kiara's determination and warmth had reminded him of Mia's spirit. "I know I can't bring her back," Doug said quietly, "but I can honor her memory by helping kids like you. That's why we bikers do what we do. Help where we can, even if people don't expect it." Kiara smiled up at him. "Thank you for helping me. It means a lot." Doug placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Keep chasing your dreams, Kiara. You've got a good heart. Don't ever lose that." As Doug rejoined his biker crew who had gathered on the other side of the street, Kiara felt a new sense of purpose. The kindness she had received wasn't just about the money. It was about the connections and the hope it brought to everyone involved. When Doug and his friends finally left, Kiara noticed a small, folded note tucked under the helmet of cash. She opened it, her heart racing as she read the handwritten words. "For the brightest light on a summer's day, keep shining." Doug and the crew, tears welled up in her eyes as she handed the note to her mom. "They didn't have to do all this," she whispered. "No, but they wanted to," Tasha said, wrapping her arms around her daughter. "That's what makes it so special." As the sun began to set, Kiara realized the day wasn't just about lemonade or money. It was about people. The stories they carried, the kindness they shared, and the connections that could change everything. By the next morning, the buzz around Kiara's lemonade stand had grown even larger than she could have imagined. The bikers had kept their word, spreading news about her stand on social media and through word of mouth. Posts with pictures of Kiara and her stand flooded local Facebook groups, accompanied by captions like "Support this young entrepreneur and best lemonade in town, approved." By some tough bikers with soft hearts, Kiara barely had time to take a breath before her first customers of the day arrived, a line of cars stretching down the block. Parents with children, elderly couples, and even workers on their lunch breaks came to see what all the excitement was about. "Wow, look at this crowd," Tasha said, peeking out the front door. "Kiara, you're going to need an assembly line." Kiara laughed, though she was a little overwhelmed. Her best friend Mia, another Mia, she thought with a pang, had shown up to help, and together they served cups of lemonade as quickly as they could. The stand had become a hub of activity. Neighbors who rarely interacted were now mingling, chatting about everything from their favorite summer treats to the bikers' surprising act of kindness. Kiara's lemonade had turned into a symbol of something bigger, proof that small moments of generosity could create ripples of change. I heard about what happened yesterday, said a man named Carlos, who ran the nearby hardware store. He handed Kiara a crisp $20 bill. We need more kids like you in this world. Thank you, sir, Kiara said, her hands sticky from pouring lemonade nonstop. The crowd continued to grow, and before long, Kiara's mom stepped in to keep things organized. Tasha made trips to the kitchen to whip up more lemonade, while Kiara and Mia kept serving. Even some of the neighborhood kids joined in, holding signs at the street corners to direct traffic to the stand. By mid-afternoon, the stand was running low on supplies, but Kiara's spirits were high. She had already raised far more than her original goal for the zoo trip. I think we're going to need a bigger pitcher, Mia joked, wiping sweat from her forehead. As they worked, a familiar roar of engines echoed down the street. The bikers had returned, this time bringing even more of their crew. They parked their motorcycles in a neat row and waved at the crowd like local celebrities. We couldn't stay away, Doug said with a grin, handing Kiara a box of freshly baked cookies. Thought these might go well with your lemonade. The bikers jumped into action, helping to manage the line and entertain the kids who had gathered around to gawk at their motorcycles. Sherry even brought out a camera, snapping pictures of Kiara with her stand and the growing crowd. I think we just broke the record for the busiest lemonade stand in Indiana, Sherry said, laughing. As the day wound down, Carlos and a few other neighbors suggested something unexpected. You've got a good thing going here, Kiara, Carlos said. What if we made this a regular event? Maybe once a month we could set up stands like this all over town and donate the money to local kids' programs. Kiara's eyes lit up. You mean like a lemonade day? Exactly, Carlos said. You could be the inspiration for it. The crowd erupted in applause at the idea, and Kiara felt a warm glow in her chest. Her little lemonade stand had turned into a spark that could ignite something much bigger. By sunset, the last customer had been served, and the bikers were preparing to head out again. Doug walked up to Kiara, his expression serious but kind. Kiara, he said, you're proof that even the smallest ideas can bring people together. Keep dreaming big, okay? She nodded, clutching the note he'd given her the day before. I will. Thank you for everything. As the bikers rode off once more, Kiara looked at her mom, her best friend, and the now empty lemonade stand. She had started the day with a simple goal, but it had grown into something she never expected. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the quieting neighborhood, Kiara sat on the front steps of her house. The lemonade stand, now folded and packed away, had left behind more than just a clean lawn. It had left a legacy of kindness and connection. Tasha joined her, carrying 2 glasses of lemonade from the last batch they'd made. She handed one to Kiara and smiled. So, how does it feel to have run the most successful lemonade stand Oak Ridge Heights has ever seen? Kiara chuckled, taking a sip. It feels amazing, but not just because of the money. I didn't know something this small could bring so many people together. Tasha nodded thoughtfully. That's the power of kindness, Kiara. When you give, even in small ways, it inspires others to do the same. And when people come together, big things can happen. Kiara looked at the helmet of cash sitting beside her, now containing far more than she needed for the zoo trip. Mom, do you think we could donate some of this? Maybe to help kids who can't afford school trips or supplies? Tasha's eyes lit up with pride. I think that's a wonderful idea. Kiara thought about Doug, his story about his daughter and the bikers who had gone out of their way to support her. I want to make people feel the way they made me feel today. Like anything is possible. As the stars began to twinkle in the sky, Kiara felt a deep sense of gratitude. Her lemonade stand had started as a small dream, but had grown into something far greater. A lesson in generosity, the strength of community, and the unexpected ways people can change each other's lives.